Hey there. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about my reading life. I have been a voracious reader for as long as I can remember, and I have wonderful memories of stopping by the little local library on my way home from school, checking out a huge stack of books and carrying them home and piling them on my bed and staying up all hours of the night just reading book after book after book. And I loved books because they were a form of entertainment, but also because they were a form of escapism that helped me, at least mentally and emotionally, have a reprieve from my very toxic and dysfunctional household. So, books in many ways were a tremendous source of comfort and encouragement and also inspiration to me. I felt that when I read books, that if the characters could go through all the things they went through and come out the other side okay, that the same thing was possible in my life. Now, mind you, this is all before I was a Christian. And if I had read the Bible, obviously that would have been a huge source of encouragement and comfort to me at the time. However, since I was not there yet, the novels I was reading were very much a source of comfort and inspiration for me. The older I got, the more challenging I found to sustain those reading habits. For example, when I graduated from Ithaca College with my bachelor's degree in English literature, I felt like I could not read books without engaging that part of my brain that was constantly analyzing the literature. And part of that was because I'd taken some pretty intensive critical theory courses as a upperclassman and learning to analyze and explore literature through these various critical lenses. Anytime I picked up anything to read, whether it was a short story or a poetry collection or a novel, a play, a nonfiction book, that part of my brain was constantly activated. And I was reading, well, what does this theory say about this? Well, how would I interpret this according to that? Or, oh, what's the symbolism behind this? There was just this constant churning that for me deprived me of the ability to just read for the sheer joy of reading. And I admit I despaired because reading had been such a source of joy for me for my entire life. And I felt that studying it so intensely as an academic discipline had stripped me of that joy and that ability to just read for sheer pleasure. In that state of despair, I began to brainstorm ways that I could reintroduce reading into my life in a way that might rekindle that spark of joy that I had previously experienced. The solution I came up with is to read literature that at the time I considered less academic, for lack of a better way to put it. Because I did love reading so much as a child and adolescent, I was like, well, why don't I read some of the things I enjoyed reading as a child? I felt that children's and young adult literature would not make me as inclined to want to analyze it. One of the first books I picked up was one of my all-time favorites, The Phantom Tollbooth. And this is my very old, very much loved copy. It is literally falling. I know I need to replace it or repair it, but I love this copy so much that I just have not found it within my power to let it go. And you can tell how old it is because it actually has a price on it. And of course, I'm old and have poor eyesight, so I have to lower my glasses to read it. $2.95 this book cost at retail. Wow, that's definitely not the case anymore. If I want to replace this book, it's going to cost me a lot more than that, hopefully. But this is just my old and well-worn copy that I cherish. So I think I would find it hard to part ways with it, even if I did purchase a new pristine copy. I have loved the Phantom Tollbooth for most of my life, and it's a book I revisit often. I read it to both of my children. They've read it multiple times. To me, it is a book that grows with you. And I feel like the older you get, the more you appreciate it wit and its whimsy and all of the profound realities that I think are even more relevant maybe to our modern life than they were when Jester originally wrote the book. And so the Phantom Tollbooth became my point of entry to re-engaging with literature as a reader, as opposed to an academic. It was the book that re-sparked and reinvigorated my love of reading for the joy of it. So I revisited all of my favorites from childhood and adolescence, from The Secret Garden and A Little Princess to all the Little House books to all the Anne of Green Gables books and many other series, Roald Dahl, many other things that I enjoyed. And I have since introduced my children to many of those beloved books as well. From that point forward, I was very relieved and happy that I was able to read books and just enjoy them as books. So fast forward, I guess it's been almost 30 years since I graduated from college at this point. Okay, we're not quite to 30 yet, so maybe like 25 at this point. I should not age myself beyond where I already am. I've been working in publishing as a writer and an editor for over 20 years now, and also teaching as an adjunct. Of course, as an editor and as a teacher, you're constantly assessing other people's writing and providing feedback. And I, of course, did that in my MFA program as well when we were workshopping other people's writing. I learned over the years that editing is an occupation that also can impact your ability to read for the sheer joy of reading. I have many friends who are editors and have zero problem whatsoever with being able to read literature for pleasure. For my part, I actually have a lot of difficulty with it. And I find that it's very hard to disengage the editor part of my brain when I'm trying to read a book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, as the case may be. So I've really been struggling to read for pleasure yet again in this season of my life. And I've been wondering, maybe I need to pick up those children's books again. I actually haven't read The Phantom Tollbooth in a few years, if not longer, so I'm overdue for a read anyway. Lately, I've been thinking that maybe I need to just pick up books that are fun and not feel as though every time I pick up something to read it has to be something that's educational or informational or has some sort of value that it's adding to my life. Because honestly, since I edit primarily nonfiction, I'm consuming a lot of information that way anyway. I don't know that that's necessarily what I want to or could or should be reading in my leisure time. It's hard because I want to learn so much from books and I want to read so many books that I don't feel like I don't have enough lifetimes to read all the books I want to read, which I think is true for anyone who's a bibliophile like me. I read a lot because that's my occupation. I spend my days reading manuscripts. I do long for and miss those days when I spent hours curled up in a chair reading a book. Maybe that's just not my season. I do have 2 school-age children. I have my own business as a freelancer. I'm a pastor's wife and a wife, period. So maybe it's unrealistic for me to think I can spend hours reading the way I used to. Usually by the end of the day, I'm so tired and I've already spent the day reading that reading for fun doesn't feel very fun. It feels like work. But maybe that's more of a reflection on my inability to compartmentalize my work brain and my leisure brain. I don't know. So I guess my question for you is this something that you've experienced in your life at all? If you are a lover of books and reading, have you ever had seasons in your life where reading books really didn't feel fun or pleasurable at all? If so, I would love to hear more about it. And if you were able to overcome those challenges, how you went about that. I certainly could use some encouragement and inspiration in that regard right now. So for all my bibliophiles out there, may we continue to love reading, even when our season may not lend itself well to that particular activity. And I pray that the Lord will be with you this day and always. See you next time.